Hey guys, this is Zero Organ Laser here. Um, September's coming up, and so in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh, that's one of the most important times because we get a new ban list. Now, what I want to do today is go a little bit through the meta, through the top decks, and show you guys what I think is going to be limited, semi-limited, banned, and maybe even brought back from the ban list. So I'm going to start off with the one card that I'm pretty sure no one is surprised about. That is, I think, is going to get banned by September. Is Future Fusion. Now, Future Fusion is ridiculous in more than one way. It is the most broken play in Chaos Dragons I can think. If they first turn that, you are gone. Because they get their grave set up, they get their banishings through Eclipse Wyvern, and they get their lights and darks in the grave. Now, that in itself is broken enough, which can set up a field full of 2/5, 2/6 monsters, including Redem. Alright, that's not the most broken thing about this card, though. Think about it in terms of heroes as well. This card sets up your graveyard like Foolish Burial can't do. For heroes, and especially Chaos Dragons, if you can activate Future Fusion, you have your materials to make your plays in your grave. It is Foolish Burial times 3, or times 5 in terms of Chaos Dragons. You can get this card, and not only do you get the fusion that comes out at the end is a kick in the face, because 5-headed is not the problem. It's the graveyard that gets set up. In terms of heroes, it means that they can instantly Miracle Fusion into something, and then if nothing gets done about Future Fusion, there's an absolute zero straight away. So, Future Fusion has been broken from the start. It was an OTK deck with Chimera Tech, and that was broken enough. So, what we need to do is we need to ban this one, and I have no doubt that this is going to get banned. In terms of limited card, I'm going to start by talking about the top 4 decks of really the meta and how they need to be slowed down, because we don't want to do what Konami did to a lot of the decks like Agents and just completely turn them off so no one plays them anymore. What we want to do is we want to control the speed of the game, and these decks can get rampant really fast. But I'm going to start off with a card that needs to get limited really badly, and that is One Day of Peace. Now, why would you say One Day of Peace? I think this card is what puts Final Countdown in a tier, and Final Countdown should not be in any tier. It's purely a troll deck, but this card lets troll decks work. And this card allows Exodia decks to run over more than one turn, to get you in 3-4 turns if they can draw multiple copies of it. One Day of Peace just allows all these troll decks to come in and actually be competitive. And troll decks should not be competitive at all, because it's there to make people miserable, and Konami doesn't want to make people miserable. So basically, you both draw a card. It's not a -1 as you'd like to think, only because you get a turn without any damage whatsoever. So you can basically control the game with this card, which is why it's a bit broken. I'm surprised that they released this. Talking about Inzectors, there is one card that can be stopped. Now, limiting Hornet is not going to do anything, because they really only need 1 or 2. They can just get it back with Levier. But limiting Dragonfly would do everyone a world of good, because Dragonfly lets them set up their Exy Swarm, it lets them set up their destruction through Dragonfly, Centipede, blah blah blah. All this stuff just happens to start from this first card, and that's why people side in Chain Disappearance. And for the fact of the matter is, if people are citing a single card to stop a single card, that must mean it must be broken, and that's why Inzector Centipede, I think, Inzector Dragonfly, has to go. It has to get limited. Semi-limited wouldn't really help the problem at all, because the Centipede that you get out after Dragonfly's effect will just search for the Dragonfly anyway. So it just needs to be stopped, and Inzectors need to be held back a little bit. The same thing with wind-ups. Now, I don't have a problem with wind-ups, and I'm not going to talk about limiting Zen Mighty, because wind-ups are really all about swarming the field. Their attacks aren't so huge, but Zen Mighty allows them to actually be competitive, and so does Rat. But Hunter needs to get banned as well, because not only can they swarm, if they get this card running, your hand gets dumped, which is completely overpowered. This should not be allowed in the game. You shouldn't start off the game with no hand, draw into something, and having to face a full field of 5 monsters on your very first turn. Unless you top deck a Dark Hole, and usually they have a Zen mains on there anyway, it's gonna be brutal. So that's why Hunter needs to go. And that just means that wind-ups have to play a little bit more control-based, they have to be a little bit more careful, and they can't just rely on the Herp Derp win. Those two decks benefit greatly from Tour Guide. Now, Tour Guide doesn't need to get limited, but it does need to get semied, only because that kind of shuts down the engine, and people will just put it in with another Tour Guide, and maybe just a Sangan anyway. But that just limits the number of times that they can exit with it. Because if you go into a tour guide, say you go into a Sangan, you've got a dead tour guide in your deck unless you add another target to it. So basically that just slows people's deck down. It makes them a little bit more clunky. It makes the engine a little bit more clunky. And it just means that it's not the huge presence and it's not the consistent draw that everyone hopes for on the first turn. And this is in play in all 4 of the top decks. All 4 of the top decks play this card, so that says something. Everyone runs it at 3 as well, so cutting it down to 2 would mean that it loses its consistency, which is what's needed. Now, in terms of rabbit decks, it's a tough one, because you don't want to limit Dolka and Lagia, the main problem, because that would pretty much shut down Evols as well. And Evols are a new archetype that's just been brought in by Konami, and I think they want to see them in play quite a bit. So maybe semming Rescue Rabbit would be a good idea, or maybe even limiting it. I'm not sure, but I don't think that Konami would go that way. I think what they'll do is they'll limit Levia the Sea Dragon, or maybe even ban it, because that's what lets them get their rabbit out, and also lets Insectors get back their Hornet. It's just really broken. So I can see this getting banned. I can see Levia getting banned, but limiting it would definitely help the problem as well. It just means that the rabbit players just don't go, I win, game over, 2 Lagias, what are you going to do? Nothing, there's nothing you can do. So that's why I think that Levia needs to be controlled. I don't know what they'll do with it, but it needs to be controlled. Now, Chaos Dragons, everyone's screaming about Chaos Dragons. They're really cheap to build, and they're very overpowered. And I've already talked about banning Future Fusion as well, which doesn't really hit heroes, but it kind of slows them down as well. But just pretend that this is Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon needs to go down to 1. I'm sorry to all the Dragunity players who play it. I'm sorry to all the other Dragon players that play it. I'm sorry to Heretics, but really, a card that lets you summon once per turn any dragon that you want from your hand or graveyard is just way too powerful. And even though most don't run 3, at 2 it's still way too consistent. And that would slow down the decks as well. So I definitely see Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon going to 2 or 1. I think 1. Light Pulsar is almost certainly going to get hit. Have no idea how it's going to get hit though. Could go to 1, could go to 2. I'm thinking it's more likely going to go to 2. But 1 wouldn't surprise me either, because that really sets up the plays as well. And really, like, it's not like Chaos Dragons won't have a win condition after Red Eyes Darkness and Light Pulse are getting hit. They're still going to have plenty of players with BLS, with Dark Arm Dragon, all that kind of stuff is still available to them. Chaos Sorcerer, etc. So this is more like a win more card, and we don't really need this card in the game as of now. So I think that's going to get hit. Heroes are a tough one to stop, really, because they can kind of incorporate a lot of aspects into the deck. So I'm going to say this. Heroes are not going to get anything limited. I think heroes are going to see a lot of things get semi-limited. The only card that might get limited, and I wouldn't even say this format, maybe next format, would be Super Polymerization, because just for the fact that it cannot be negated. And it kind of hurts heroes as well. I think this card is just too overpowered, because, I mean, come on, to have a card that can't be negated, I mean, really. And with the hero fusions that are going around nowadays, especially when Escurideo comes out, this guy's going to be brutal. So I can definitely see Super Poly going down to 1, if maybe not this ban list, definitely in the next couple of ban lists. But having said that, I mean, it's not super important to ban this card, because the next card is far more important to get down, and that is Gemini Spark. Gemini Spark needs to go down to 2, and I'll tell you why. Because really, like, you're getting not only is it a destruction of your opponent's card, but it's a +1 to you, and it's chainable, which is the most important thing. So you've not only, like, you summon a smart player won't hit Neos Alias, but if you try and hit Neos Alias with a Torrential and something like that, they flip this thing from their hand or from their field, and you've already lost another card, because you've wasted your card on Neos Alias. Gemini Spark tributes it, destroys one of your cards, and then they draw off it. That, I think, is just ridiculous. So I definitely see this thing going down to 2. Would not surprise me at all. Same with Miracle Fusion as well. Miracle Fusion would purely hurt thing going down to 2, hurt heroes going down to 2, and it doesn't really need to be at 3. Come on, let's be honest with you. because the worst thing to happen is you think you're controlling the game, and then they topped. It's literally like topping decking a Dark Hole, which I'm not too happy about. But I don't see Dark Hole getting hit. Top decking a Miracle Fusion not only swings the game in your favor, it pretty much seals the game in your favor late game if you're a hero player. So you can get out a Shining that's at like 3-5 attack, or an Absolute Zero that just completely controls the field. That's what I don't like about this card. It just turns the game to one side way too quickly, which is why I think it's going to get hit to 2. And the next card I see definitely getting banned is Heavy Storm. This guy's been banned, not banned, etc. I just think they need to stop this once and for all, because you should not have to fear putting down back row. Okay, back row is there to stop cards, and Heavy Storm just says nope. I'm going to set 2 back row, and without protection, that's a +1 for me. And I'm not going to worry about any of your plays because heavy. So, I mean, smart players will put in Starlight Road, but I just think that heavy just needs to stop. Like, we've already got Dark Hole. Dark Hole is mass destruction enough, and Spell and Traps play a much greater role in the game, I think. So, I think heavy needs to just stop. I think it just needs to go. Now, returning cards. I don't know, I had a thought maybe we'd see Blackwing Gale go back up to 2 to make Blackwings a little bit more competitive, because they're kind of dead now, which is a real shame, because they used to top quite a few formats ago, and I don't really like to see a deck type go dead, so I think Blackwing Gale might go back up to 2, but one card that I definitely will see going back to 2 is Bestiary, Gladiator Beast Bestiary, because really, where are Glads going? They're not going anywhere anymore. And they had so much support, you know, in later packs as well. We saw them go up and down, and Test Tiger got hit, and then they went down a bit. Then we had this Hero Lives plays. Now Prisma should definitely go back up to 2, because Glads have the potential to be explosive decks, but they don't overdo it, if you know what I'm saying. Like, they don't go to the point of Chaos Dragons where they get 3 big beat sticks on the field. You know, the worst that can happen is they get out like Heraclinos, which is Shien anyway, so in all honesty, I don't think Bestiary is that much of a problem anymore, and I don't think it should be limited anymore. Semi-limited is much more reasonable, I think. So I'd say Bestiary along with Blackwing Gale will definitely go back up, and TG Striker as well. I mean, okay, Konami wanted to stop these TG agents, and that is fine, but they limited Earth. They stopped Earth, right? And so that's the agent part of the deck done, but now Konami have just shut down TG decks as well. So, really, the only valid deck that TG Strike goes into is TG Stun. And, okay, TG Stun's been doing good, but we definitely need to see more anti-meta and more stun kind of decks in the meta today. And so, I think Striker going back up to 2 will help stun decks quite a bit. This may, of course, seem quite biased, because I do run a Gladiator Beast and a TG Stun deck, but it makes sense just to bring this card back to give TGs a bit more life. Because right now, I don't see many people playing TGs anymore. Same with Blackwing, and same with Gladiator Beast. We just need to see those old guys come back, you know, to kind of equalize the meta. Because we have decks running 3 Tour Guide, Future Fusion, and they're just roll-for stomping everything. So, I mean, that's what I think is going to happen this format in September. Let me know what you guys think. Comment. I'm always up for a discussion. But if you liked this video, just like and subscribe. Thanks very much.